Hello, amazing listeners. Welcome back to the Artificial Fluency Podcast. I'm Emma, and in today's episode, we're going to dive into a fun and exciting topic that will help improve both your English listening and writing skills. When you listen to real-life stories, you'll learn new vocabulary and how to use English naturally. So make sure you stay tuned until the end. And don't forget to press the like button if you enjoyed today's content. Let's start with a few questions. Have you ever been on a road trip with your family or friends? Or perhaps you've had a memorable experience traveling to a new city or country. What did you learn from that experience? And how did it change your perspective? Think about it for a moment. I'll share a story from my own experience to get you thinking. A few years ago, I went on a road trip with my husband, Mark. We drove through the countryside, stopping at small towns and meeting locals along the way. One day, we visited a charming village known for its old architecture. We spent the day exploring, and in the evening, we went to a small local restaurant. There we met a couple who were also traveling, and we started talking about our journeys. It was amazing how much we learned from each other's stories. They told us about their favorite spots in the city, and we shared tips on where to find the best food on the road. This experience taught me that talking to people from different backgrounds can give you valuable insights and expand your understanding of the world. And the best part? I was able to practice my English with native speakers while enjoying the journey. Now let's think about another example. Have you ever had a challenging conversation at work or school? I once had a conversation with a colleague named Sarah, who worked in the marketing department. We had different ideas about a project, and at first it was hard to find common ground. But by listening carefully and being open to her suggestions, we were able to reach an agreement. This experience helped me understand the importance of communication skills and how listening plays a big role in finding solutions. Learning English isn't just about grammar rules or memorizing vocabulary. It's about understanding the stories and experiences of others and being able to communicate your own ideas clearly. Through real-life stories like these, you'll be able to improve your listening and writing skills naturally. So, I encourage you to think about your own experiences, whether it's traveling, working, or learning something new. What lessons have you learned? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Remember, here at the English Pod community, we upload videos every day to help you improve your English. Each episode is designed to make learning fun and easy, so you can practice anytime, anywhere. Stay tuned, and let's continue with more stories and practical English tips. Another interesting situation I want to share is about an important phone call I had a few months ago. Making phone calls in English can be challenging, especially when you have to explain something clearly or ask for important information. But the more you practice, the easier it becomes. One morning, I received a call from a delivery company. They told me that my package had arrived, but there was a problem with the address. I needed to explain where I lived and give clear directions. At first, I felt a little nervous. I wanted to make sure they understood me correctly. So I took a deep breath and spoke slowly. I said, "My house is on Green Street near the bakery. If you see a small blue gate, that's the entrance." The person on the phone repeated the instructions to confirm, and in the end, they were able to find my house without any problems. This situation taught me how important it is to speak clearly and use simple words when explaining something. If I had spoken too fast or used complicated words, the delivery person might not have understood me. That's why practicing simple, clear English is so useful in daily life. Have you ever had to explain directions or give instructions over the phone? How did it go? Think about a time when you had to ask for help or give important information in English. These real-life experiences can help you become more confident when speaking. Now, let me share another story about an unexpected challenge. One day, my friend Daniel invited me to his house for dinner. He told me that his grandmother would be there too. When I arrived, I greeted everyone and sat down at the table. His grandmother, Mrs. Wilson, was very kind, but she spoke in a soft voice, and I had trouble understanding everything she said. At first, I felt embarrassed to ask her to repeat herself, but then I decided to be polite and say, "I'm sorry, could you say that again?" She smiled and repeated her sentence more slowly. This made me realize that asking for clarification is completely normal and helps improve communication. Many English learners feel nervous about asking someone to repeat themselves. But remember, it's okay to ask. You can say, "Could you say that again, please?" Or, "I didn't catch that. Could you repeat it?" These small phrases will help you in conversations and make you feel more confident. Let's talk about an experience that many of us have had: going to a new place where we don't know anyone. This could be a new workplace, a new school, or even moving to a different city. It can feel exciting but also a little scary, especially when you need to communicate in English. I remember when I first joined a new office, I was happy about the opportunity, but I was also worried about how I would interact with my colleagues. On my first day, I walked into the office and saw groups of people talking to each other. They seemed comfortable, like they had known each other for a long time. I wasn't sure how to start a conversation or introduce myself. I kept thinking, what if I say something wrong? What if they don't understand me? But then I remembered something important. Most people are friendly and willing to talk if you take the first step. So I took a deep breath and walked up to a woman who was standing near the coffee machine. Her name was Sarah. I smiled and said, "Hi, I'm Natasha. I just joined the team today." She smiled back and said, "Oh, welcome. Nice to meet you. What department are you in?" I told her about my role, and soon we were having a conversation about work and even about where we lived. Just by starting with a simple introduction, I was able to make my first connection at the office. That day, I learned something important. Starting a conversation doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need to say something special or impressive. A simple greeting like, "Hi, I'm new here," or "Hello, nice to meet you," is enough to start talking. People appreciate friendliness, and when you make the first move, it becomes easier for others to respond. But I also had a challenge that day. Later in the afternoon, my manager, Mr. Roberts, asked me to join a meeting. The meeting was about a project, and people were talking fast. They used some words I didn't know, and I had trouble keeping up. I started to feel nervous because I didn't want to ask too many questions. But then I reminded myself that asking for clarification is part of learning. When one of my colleagues, David, mentioned a term I didn't understand, I waited for a pause and said, "Excuse me, could you explain what that means?" David smiled and explained it in a simple way. I realized that asking questions doesn't make you look weak. It actually shows that you are interested and engaged. After the meeting, I made a habit of writing down new words and phrases that I heard at work. Every evening, I would review them and try to use them in conversations the next day. Over time, my confidence grew, and I felt more comfortable speaking in meetings. This experience taught me two things. First, don't be afraid to start conversations. People are usually happy to talk to you if you show interest. And second, never be afraid to ask questions when you don't understand something. English is a skill that improves with practice, and the more you communicate, the better you get. Now let me share another story about a time I had to solve a problem in English. One evening, I was cooking dinner at home when I realized I was missing an important ingredient: flour. I needed it to make bread, and without it, I couldn't finish the meal. It was already late, so most shops were closed. But I remembered that there was a small grocery store a few blocks away. I quickly put on my coat and walked to the store. When I got there, I looked around but couldn't find the flour. I didn't want to leave without it, so I decided to ask for help. I saw an employee organizing shelves, so I walked up to him and said, "Excuse me, do you have any flour?" The employee looked at me and said, "Flour? Oh yes, it's in the baking section on the second shelf." I thanked him and found exactly what I needed. Now this might seem like a simple situation, but it reminded me of something important: speaking. English in real life is often about asking for help and getting information. If I had been too shy to ask, I would have left the store without what I needed. But because I asked, I was able to complete my dinner. This is why practicing simple phrases like, "Excuse me, where can I find?" or "Do you have?" can be very useful in daily life. Whether you're shopping, traveling, or at work, being able to ask for help is an essential skill. Think about the last time you had to ask for help in English. Maybe you needed directions, information, or assistance with something. How did you feel? The more you practice these situations, the more confident you will become. A few years ago, I moved to a new city to start a job. The city was beautiful, but I didn't know anyone there, and I felt a little lonely. I didn't have any friends yet, and I didn't know the best places to go to meet new people. At first, I thought, maybe I'll just stay at home after work. But then I realized something important. If I wanted to make new friends, I had to go out and be open to meeting people. One weekend, I decided to join a local hiking group. I had never hiked before, but I thought it would be a great way to see the city and meet people. When I arrived at the meeting point, I felt nervous. I didn't know anyone and I was unsure how to start a conversation. But I remembered that everyone there was probably feeling the same way. I took a deep breath and walked up to a woman who was standing alone. Her name was Emily. I smiled and said, "Hi, I'm Natasha. I'm new to the city, and I thought this would be a good way to explore." Emily smiled back and said, "Oh, welcome. I'm Emily. I've been living here for a few years now. Hiking is one of my favorite things to do." We started talking about the best hiking trails in the area, and by the end of the hike, we had become friends. We exchanged phone numbers and planned to meet again. I realized that making new friends doesn't have to be difficult. A simple greeting like, "Hi, I'm new here," can open the door to new friendships. This story also shows how important it is to be open and confident when speaking English. Even though I was nervous, I knew that if I didn't make the effort to talk to people, I would miss out on great opportunities. English isn't just for work or school, it's also for connecting with others and building relationships. When you find yourself in a new environment, whether it's a new workplace, school, or social setting, remember that starting a conversation can be simple. You don't need to be perfect at English. The most important thing is to try, even if you make mistakes. People appreciate effort, and most of the time, they will help you if they don't understand something. After I became friends with Emily, she introduced me to other people in the city. We went to cafes, parks, and other places where I could practice my English. At first, I was nervous about speaking, but over time, I became more comfortable. The more I spoke, the more I learned, and the more my confidence grew. I want to ask you, have you ever found yourself in a situation where you were nervous to speak English, but then realized that you could connect with others by simply saying hello? Think about that moment when you took the first step to talk to someone new. How did it feel? This experience taught me something valuable. It's not just about learning English for work or school. It's also about using English to connect with people, build friendships, and enjoy life in new ways. Every conversation you have is an opportunity to improve, so don't be afraid to talk to others. Let me share another experience that will help you think about how English can be used in everyday situations, especially when you need to solve a problem. Last year, I was at a local market shopping for groceries. I had a long list of items, and I was focused on getting everything I needed. However, when I got to the checkout, I realized that I had forgotten my wallet at home. I felt embarrassed, and I didn't know what to do. I looked around, and I saw a woman behind me in line who seemed to be in a hurry. I didn't want to delay her, but I had no choice. I turned to her and said, "Excuse me, I'm so sorry, but I left my wallet at home. Would you be able to help me pay for these items? I promise I'll pay you back." I was nervous, but I was polite and explained my situation. To my surprise, the woman smiled and said, "No problem. I'll pay for it and you can pay me back later." She gave me her phone number and we exchanged a few words while I finished my shopping. I couldn't believe how kind she was. This experience taught me something important about English. It's not just about knowing grammar or vocabulary. It's about using your language skills to navigate situations and solve problems. In this case, I needed to communicate politely and clearly to explain my situation. I could have just left the store and felt embarrassed, but instead I used English to find a solution and connect with someone. The next time you face a difficult situation or need help, don't be afraid to ask for assistance. English is a tool that can help you communicate and get through tough moments. Whether you're at a store, on the phone, or asking for directions, speaking English with confidence can make a huge difference in your daily life. Now think about times in your life when you've had to ask for help or explain a problem in English. How did you feel afterward? The more you practice using English in these real-world situations, the more confident you will become. And remember, it's okay to make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes, and they're a natural part of learning. What's important is that you keep going and keep practicing. You'll be surprised at how much you can accomplish when you stay confident and keep speaking English. Let's explore another situation that many people experience: ordering food at a restaurant. This might seem simple, but when you're in a new country or speaking a different language, even basic tasks like ordering food can feel challenging. I want to share a personal experience that helped me improve my confidence in speaking English, and I hope it will give you useful ideas on how to handle similar situations. A few years ago, I traveled to a new city for work. It was my first time visiting that place, and after a long day, I was tired and hungry. I walked around the streets looking for a good place to eat. Finally, I found a small, cozy restaurant that smelled amazing. The menu was in English, but some of the words were new to me. I felt a little nervous. What if I didn't pronounce the dish correctly? What if I didn't understand the waiter? But then I reminded myself of something important. Communication is not about being perfect. It's about making an effort. So I took a deep breath, walked in, and found a table. A friendly waiter came over and handed me a menu. I looked at the options and saw something that sounded delicious. Grilled chicken with roasted vegetables. The waiter smiled and said, "Are you ready to order?" I nodded and said, "Yes, I'd like the grilled chicken with roasted vegetables, please." He asked, "Would you like any sides with that?" At first, I wasn't sure what to say, but then I saw that the menu listed rice and potatoes as options, so I asked, "What do you recommend?" The waiter said, "I think the roasted potatoes are really good." So I smiled and said, "Okay, I'll have the roasted potatoes with it." After placing my order, I felt proud of myself. Even though I was in a new place, I had managed to communicate confidently. But the story doesn't end here. A few minutes later, I realized I wanted to ask for some water. I saw the waiter walking by, but I wasn't sure how to get his attention politely. Should I wave? Should I call him loudly? I didn't want to be rude. So I waited until he came closer and then made eye contact. I smiled and said, "Excuse me, could I have some water, please?" He nodded and quickly brought me a glass of water. That small moment taught me something valuable. Being polite and using simple, clear English can help you communicate effectively. Later that evening, I faced another challenge. When my food arrived, it looked delicious, but I wanted to ask for some extra sauce. Again, I felt a little nervous about how to ask, but instead of overthinking, I simply said, "Excuse me, could I get some extra sauce, please?" The waiter smiled and said, "Of course, I'll bring it right away." That night, I learned that ordering food in English doesn't have to be stressful. The key is to use polite and clear phrases like, "I'd like," when ordering food. "Could you recommend something?" When asking for suggestions, "Excuse me, could I have?" When asking for something politely. After that experience, I felt much more confident whenever I went to restaurants. I practiced these phrases again and again, and soon they became natural to me. Now let me share another situation that happened a few months later. I was at a cafe with my friend Daniel. We were enjoying some tea and talking about our day, when suddenly he spilled his drink on the table. It was an accident, but we needed help to clean it up. I looked around for a waiter, and when one walked by, I said, "Excuse me, we had a small spill here. Could we get some napkins, please?" The waiter smiled and said, "No problem. I'll bring some right away." This moment reminded me of something important. When you're in a public place like a restaurant or cafe, you might need to ask for things or handle unexpected situations. Learning polite requests can make these moments easier. Some useful phrases are, "Could I get some napkins, please?" "Could you bring the check, please?" "Do you have a menu in English?" If you practice these simple phrases, you'll feel much more confident the next time you eat out. But what if you have a problem with your order? What if you receive the wrong food? This actually happened to me once. I had ordered a vegetable soup, but when the waiter brought my food, I saw that it was a seafood soup instead. I don't eat seafood, so I needed to ask for a correction. At first, I felt nervous. I didn't want to sound rude, but I also wanted to make sure I got the right meal. So I took a deep breath and said, "Excuse me, I think there's been a mistake. I ordered the vegetable soup, but this is seafood soup." The waiter looked at the order slip and quickly said, "Oh, I'm so sorry about that. I'll bring you the correct dish right away." This experience taught me that it's okay to speak up if something isn't right. You don't need to stay silent just because you feel shy or nervous. As long as you are polite, people will appreciate your communication. So, if you ever receive the wrong order or need something different, you can say, "Excuse me, I think there's been a mistake. I ordered. I'm sorry, but I can't eat this. Could I get something else? This isn't what I ordered. Could you check it for me?" These small but important phrases can help you feel more comfortable when eating out. Now let me ask you, have you ever been in a situation where you had to order food in English? How did it go? Did you feel nervous or did it go smoothly? The more you practice these real-life situations, the easier they become. And remember, making mistakes is part of learning. The important thing is to keep trying and improving every day. Now let's continue with more practical English practice. I took out my phone and tried to use an online map, but my internet connection was slow. I looked around and saw many streets and buildings, but I had no idea which way to go. At that moment, I knew I had to ask someone for help. I saw an elderly man sitting on a bench, reading a newspaper. I walked up to him and said, "Excuse me, sir, could you help me? I'm trying to find the Central Market." The man smiled and said, "Ah, the Central Market. Yes, it's a little tricky to find. You need to walk straight down this street, then turn left at the second traffic light. After that, walk for about 5 minutes and you'll see the market on your right." Let's go even deeper into real-life situations where you need to use English. One of the most common and important situations is asking for directions. Imagine you are in a new city and you need to find your hotel, a restaurant, or a store. You have a map, but you are still confused. What do? You ask someone for help. But how do you do that in English? Let me share a story that will help you understand how to ask for directions in a polite and natural way. Getting lost in a new city. A few years ago, I traveled to another country for a conference. I was excited, but also a little nervous because it was my first time visiting this place. After arriving at the airport, I took a taxi to my hotel, checked in, and then decided to go for a walk. I wanted to find a famous local market that I had read about online. The market was known for its fresh fruits, handmade crafts, and delicious food. I thought it would be easy to find, but after walking for about 20 minutes, I took out my phone and tried to use an online map, but my internet connection was slow. I looked around and saw many streets and buildings, but I had no idea which way to go. At that moment, I knew I had to ask someone for help. I saw an elderly man sitting on a bench reading a newspaper. I walked up to him and said, "Excuse me, sir, could you help me? I'm trying to find the Central Market." The man smiled and said, "Ah, the Central Market. Yes, it's a little tricky to find. You need to walk straight down this street, then turn left at the second traffic light. After that, walk for about 5 minutes and you'll see the market on your right." I listened carefully, repeated the directions back to him, and thanked him. I said, "Thank you so much. I really appreciate your help." He smiled and replied, "No problem. Enjoy your time at the market." I followed his directions, and within 10 minutes, I arrived at the market. I was so happy because I had successfully communicated in English, asked for help, and reached my destination. How to ask for directions in English. This experience taught me an important lesson. Asking for directions doesn't have to be difficult. You just need to know a few simple phrases. That's all for today's episode of Artificial Fluency. I'm absolutely convinced that improving your cultural intelligence will take your English skills to extraordinary new heights. Remember, true fluency happens when you understand both the words and the invisible cultural context behind them. We'll explore the art of small talk, those seemingly simple conversations that can actually be the most challenging for language learners. Until then, this is Emma reminding you that language is the doorway to culture, and every new cultural insight brings you one step closer to true fluency. Keep being curious, and I'll see you next week for another mind-expanding episode.